From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme, bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery. Hello, and welcome to Creative Connections. It's been a while since I've been here, but we are back. And with me today is also the very first guest I had the first time I did the show, Gary Lippincott. Gary, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gary. It's the Gary half hour,
yes,
apparently.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, it has been an interesting year and a half.
That's for sure.
How did the whole pandemic and lockdown affect you as an artist?
There was a pandemic? No, obviously there's been, I gotta say, I've heard that question, 50 times now since the pandemic, and as an artist, that has not been a villain in my business at all. In fact, I almost want to say that it enhanced my ability to stay home, maintain my focus on what I want to focus on, and it's kind of a terrible way of, almost applauding something that should not be applauded at all. But it really had very little effect on me. I had several jobs lined up before it was obvious that the world was going to be in this situation, and so all of that was already in place, and my ability to go from my house to my studio, which is over top of my garage, I say I'm walking 30 yards at the most, it didn't affect that at all. So in a way, being this secluded creative out in the middle of nowhere, it's a wonder that I was actually able to notice the difference,
Okay. So, and it's an interesting thing because I think for some people, they found that having that time actually allowed them more time for creativity. So, what projects are you working on?
I'm doing a picture book for an author that is self-publishing. I had done one for him before, and he liked it, and he's having me do a second picture book. So I'm still in the throes of doing all the artwork for that, and I got to say, the manuscript that he sent me was so abstract that it became I wasn't even sure I wanted to do it, but then it became a thing where, okay, this looks like one of those manuscripts where I get free rein on this thing because it was the writing is so abstract. It's sort of like Tim Burton meets Dr. Seuss meets somebody, and so the visuals to this thing could go in any direction. So I was allowed to take them as I saw fit in the direction that I would normally take, and it's probably going to be what I consider my best work, as far as. So here we are in the middle of the world being in such turmoil, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm doing my best work here, kind of a thing,
Is it easier when the characters are more abstract, or is it easier when the characters are so well described that you kind of know what to draw?
In my case, I would say most of the time, if you were to ask any illustrator that, they would opt to answer that the more information provided, the easier it is for them. So, I did The Prince and the Pauper, and obviously you're not going to sway left or right to Mark Twain's writings, but and that was all well and good. But when left to my own device, so to speak, when it is not as obvious as to what the characters look like or what's going on in the story, I kind of have a tendency to go crazy with a story within a story within a story. So whatever the verse is telling us, or you're reading in this book, there's always something else going on in the background, and having the ability to not be so tied into a particular type of character or type of storyline has given me such freedom to almost tell the story myself. So, hey, I give that the utmost grade A1.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and I know that you sometimes do use models when you're doing work.
I do.
And we have one picture. Let's bring this up.
That's my favorite model.
Tell us about this model.
Well, it's funny because I was doing books many years ago where it seemed like all the books, when a publisher sees your work, they all of a sudden start, when they want you to do something else, it's always of the same genre, or it's the same, okay, so all of a sudden I was doing boys, in all the work. And my daughter was sort of taken back by, I have two children, a son and a daughter, and it seemed like my son was getting all the modeling jobs for any of the books that I was doing. And so my daughter was sort of like, in a very nice way, she was, Dad, I made it into the background of some of that stuff. And so when she turned 16, I said, I'm going to just do a portrait of my daughter. And of course it was going to have to be fairy, and it was going to have to be fantasy. And so I did this portrait called Elfin Asia. Her name is Asia. And actually this piece of art had more notoriety backed behind it. It became the best of Spectrum and wound up in the illustrators of New York City, displayed down there, and I think it's actually gotten more comments than any of the books that my son has been in. So, she got her, and she owns the original and things like that. So she, yeah. I think, is no longer feeling like she's been slighted in my art career.
And, I think one thing that makes it is the smile.
Oh, and she still has that smile, and she.
That's no Mona Lisa type smile. That's an out and out, gleeful smile. And the thing that I love about it, and particularly seeing it at this size, is that I can see all these little faces back in there that I really had not noticed before. I noticed these in the foreground, but the detail is just absolutely amazing.
Well, that's actually I got known for doing that type of thing in all the art, and I think any art director or any editor to any publisher say, well, let's get Gary Lippincott, because he does these things in the background that people don't see at first, and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, this is what's happening back there, So, it's not unlike me to And that's what makes this book that I'm working on so interesting, is it's going to have things going on that have absolutely nothing to do with the text to the book. And I like doing that. I like developing my own narrative to the artwork that I do.
So basically, it's like the book is telling one story, but I'm
telling 5 others.
Illustrations are telling others.
Yeah, right.
What's the name of the book?
It's called Making Cookies from the Sun.
Okay, so...
and it should be, I hope, finished, my end of it finished in the late summer. So
okay,
we're getting there, yeah.
Yeah, that's a book that folks out there will want to look to, because...
well, if they care about what I do.
Yeah. I'm sure we talked about this last time, but how did you go from being sort of a generalist as an artist to being the fantasy guy?
I fell in love with the book Fairies back in, when was that, 79? Or Brian Froud and Alan Lee put out a book, Fairies, and it's actually become so worldwide known that everybody knows. All you got to do is mention those names. In fact, Alan Lee did all the conceptual art for the Lord of the Rings movies. Brian Froud has done conceptual art for Jim Henson's Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and all this. So these guys were very influential to anybody that was doing fantasy art or fairy art or any of that stuff. And it hit me the same way. When I started, I actually had the opportunity to see some original art from these guys, and I went, whoa. And before that, I was painting oil paintings, large scale landscapes and things like that. But when I saw that work, I went, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I want to present myself to the public as far as being an artist. And I've been doing it ever since, you know.
So a painting like Elfinasia,
yeah.
How is the original done? What medium?
It's everything I've been doing is in watercolor.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to paint in oils when I was in art school, and I still want to get back into it. But I became known as the guy that can do detailed watercolors. And when you get cubbyholed into that kind of thing, you just continue to do that. Plus, I love both the artists I just mentioned were watercolorists too, or are watercolors.
Okay.
So I started teaching myself watercolor because I never took a watercolor class. But yeah, anything that you're going to see from me, unless it's something obscure, is going to be watercolor on paper.
You know, it's funny because as a person who is not really that familiar with visual arts, when I think of watercolors, I think of the kind of soft wash.
Well, yeah, and that's what a lot of people do. It's a sketching medium more than it is a finished art kind of medium. But if you actually start looking into people that have used watercolor for their entire artistic career or life, they got it down to where it became very useful to depict realism and all kinds of things. It wasn't this sketchy thing that we immediately think of with watercolor, Yeah.
So let's look at another picture here.
Another watercolor.
And what's this one?
This is the cover to a book of my art that we did a Kickstarter thing called Making Magic. And it doesn't have the title or any of the text that wound up on the front of the book, but it was like 35 years collection of a lot of the artwork that I've done over the years, and this was the cover to it.
And this was created specifically for the cover?
For the cover, yeah.
Okay. Is that a self-portrait?
Everybody asks that. All I have to do is paint a man with a beard, and all of a sudden it's, oh, well, this is you, isn't it? No, well, it may be in a certain way, but no, I didn't look in the mirror and paint that. No, it was funny because I may have said this the last time we were talking. Is as a child, I always wanted to be a wizard. That was my aspiration as to what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I want to be a wizard. Well, okay, this is the closest I come. So it tickles me when everybody mistakes me for the wizard in the picture because, okay, yeah, I am the wizard, that painted that, but, maybe not that wizard,
And it's funny because in a way it is a self-portrait because you are a magic maker.
Yeah.
And, I look at this and I see, like all the books that represent all the study, all the work you've put into what you do to learn the spells that create this. And what people at home probably cannot see is just a detailed writing and illustrations on the paper there. There's a little fairy right there. Just again, all these details that, as you say, you're known for. And this just, to me, sort of symbolizes what I think of when I think of your artwork. That whole sense of magic and wonder.
Okay, this was a self-portrait. No, in a way, this is it. This is me to the T. It's like
I
no
see
doubt.
Stanley's been able to bring up some of the writing.
Oh, that was
that's
I go crazy over stuff like that, and just to get the perspective, so that the writing is not like this, it's like that. So that's taken years of experience to be able to put that. I sit there and everybody said, "Well, where did you get this from?" Well, there was absolutely no reference in front of me but a blank piece of watercolor paper, and this is what I see inside my crazy mind when I go to do stuff. And so, like I said, I guess that sort of verifies, this is a self-portrait.
I think self-portraits, we tend to think of
like a likeness.
The likeness. But I think that this sort of captures who you are
more
as an
than
artist. Yeah. Something like this, from conception to finish, how much time goes into it?
How many interruptions were there, Gary? I don't do that anymore. I'm gonna put a wild guess out there because every time I actually try to record the amount of time, I get depressed about how long it takes. So I stopped doing that a few years back. But if I had to guess, if I were to say, okay, I worked a 40, 50-hour week, something like that would have taken me well over a month to do. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I mean, just to me, just planning it.
Yeah. Well, there were some sketches that came before that too, I could figure out where I wanted things. But and the beauty of that piece is because I was doing it strictly for my book, I didn't have to answer to anybody else as to where things are, how many things, or what color, or what kind of a thing. I have a tendency to put too much stuff in there, so we had to block out all the smoky dragon stuff that was going on in the top, just to put the title in and then my name at the bottom and stuff like that. But it all came out okay, so that was fine.
Yeah. Let's see what else we have here.
Mr. Oak.
Mr. Oak, which we can see the title right there.
Mr. Oak was the result of a commission from Fantasy Magazine. There were I'm not sure I got the total name of that, but they used to publish short stories from pretty well-known authors, and don't even ask me who the author was to this story, but they would send me the manuscript, and then I would do an illustration just for the first page of the manuscript of the story. And this particular piece caught everybody's attention enough that it also, just like Elfinasia, became a piece that was exhibited at the Society of Illustrators in New York City, just for the fact that it had such an audience that liked it so much.
Yeah. Oh, it's so very evocative. Yeah. And it's like she is embracing the tree, but it looks like the limbs
are living, right. And that's actually, this was a case of where the story did project its need to have that kind of a scenario happening, you know. And the fact that, I think one of the reasons why I was commissioned was I love doing trees, and the fact that the tree was such a major character in this story is what led the art director or the editor to that magazine. It was Realms of Fantasy, that was the name of the magazine, to ask me to do this piece, because they knew that if I did a tree, it was going to be sort of living anyhow, you know?
Right. Yeah. This doesn't have some of the extras in the background.
Yeah, well, don't forget there's text and stuff. Yeah.
But the detail, I love the roots.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, you get this whole sense of life.
Yeah.
And not just the life that we usually associate with a tree.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then we have...
Oh, this is probably, it is. It's the latest piece I've done that was of any major amount of time and effort. I just sold it to someone out in Dayton, Ohio, I believe the guy lived. Yeah, I was exhibiting it down the street here at Artworks, the gallery that Workshop 13 has, and of course, you know, for the price and for the type of art it is, it wasn't going to sell there, but I have to make a presence because I'm part of Workshop 13. So, and but somebody saw it online and said, "Oh, I want that." Without even seeing the original art, they wanted it. It was very much along the feel and subject that Alan Lee and Brian Fowler, the people that I am so crazy about, this was sort of along the same lines that they would paint with, and so. Sold it, and sent it to Dayton, Ohio.
There you go.
Yeah.
Here, what I really love is a reflection in the water.
Yeah, right.
And it's so perfect a reflection because it is not like a mirror.
Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, unless you have a very calm water source, it's not going to be a mirror, you know. So you have to, if you're going to give the water some kind of life, you have to make that obvious in the reflection too. Yeah.
Because you can feel, you can, of course, obviously you see the water cascading down, but you can see the movement of the water.
Right.
And it's so natural because it's not just flowing outward, but it's flowing
back
to the side.
Towards, right.
Yeah.
You really got this art thing down, don't you, Gary?
Well,
my goodness, you're pretty attentive to this subject.
I have no ability for visual art, but I love it.
Yeah.
And
you understand quite a bit of it.
I do try to. Hard to understand it because it speaks to me. Yeah. And your work in particular does. I think we
I'm sorry about that, Gary.
You have one more of yours to look at.
Oh my goodness, yeah, right.
When I see this, I remember when we first met, I looked at your website and you talked about commuting to work on the back of a dragon.
Yeah, well, that was sort of let's get everybody's attention on what I do for a living, you know.
And that's exactly what I think of when I see this.
Yeah. Dragons, I mean, you know, being a part of the whole fantasy genre as far as art is concerned, dragons, you can't just ignore their existence in that world. You know, you've got to do a certain amount of dragon artwork. So this was a piece, and it was funny because this was a piece that wasn't designated for any books or stories or anything like that. I was just doing it out of the sheer love to do. And I actually, to be truthful, I don't know if it was the dragons that I was so focused on. It was doing this, you know, castle, edge of castle landscape. Because before I even, when I was painting as a painting major down at the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore, it was landscape work that I was so totally engrossed with. So to be able to bring some of that back into the fantasy things that I'm doing is probably the most pleasurable part of this whole thing. I don't think you'll ever see anything where I've done strictly a fantasy subject without some kind of landscape or tree or you know, organic growth or something like that going on, you know. This is the closest I get to actually doing New York City, you know.
You know, and what I love, first of all, a lot of times when I see dragons, I see a dragon.
Exactly, yeah.
And, you know, why would a dragon want to live all on its own?
Yeah.
You know, so here you have a family with the little ones
the roost,
waiting to be hatched.
right. They're ready to be hatched, and watch out for tomorrow. You know?
and then the ruin of the tower here, you know, where things are broken off and just absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you.
So tell me how. We do have another one here.
That is probably the most popular thing I'd ever painted, ever. And this was done well before Lord of the Rings was a public situation where everybody knew what that was. But I did this many, many years ago, and I called it There and Back Again, thinking that I could disguise it from the Tolkien Society without getting sued for using their imagery, you know. But then all of a sudden now everybody knows that the Hobbit was writing There and Back Again. So I still haven't heard from the Tolkien Society, but yeah, this was a piece that obviously took some time. The border itself took more time than the actual interior to the piece. And
again, there's the landscape and the road.
Exactly. And there's that darn self-portrait again. I just got to get that beard going a little better. We've got a concert at the park up here. Help me on this, Gary.
Grenville Park?
Grenville Park. And then we're going to start up back with music in the Grand Hall in September. So, and we've got the dog park mural happening. We've got the Clayworks is doing well, the ceramic studio. The gallery is holding its own just by being existing there and all. But no, things are picking up. And Marie, who I'm sure you're going to have to interview her sometime soon. She is the reason, I mean, the main reason why Workshop 13 is actually because she's on the ball. I mean, she's getting the grants and she's calling the people and she's making things happen. And I think it's got some life left in it, you know.
Great. Gary, I wish we had more time.
Well, we have what we have, you know. We say that on our deathbeds, don't we?
Yes. It was a pleasure talking with you again. And folks, it's a pleasure to spend this time with you. And I'll see you again next time on Creative Connections. From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme. bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery.